Hello and happy Tuesday to all out there. Welcome into the PHLY Phillies podcast. Jamie Lynch, Tyler Zulli in with you. And, the offseason, Tyler, is kind of like heating up a little bit. And we're going to get to what that means with Juan Soto and all of that. But like all of a sudden this Tuesday, it's just kind of chock full of information. All it takes is one Jeff Passan story, one Juan Soto taking meetings. And it feels like the offseason is starting to warm up a little bit on the old hot stove. And Tyler, I'm choosing and I'm willing to believe optimism this offseason. I think some of the conversation in our Discord and social media, there's a little bit of a negative feeling out there. I'm choosing to believe wholesale changes coming. The Phillies are open to a lot, and this will segue us into the Jeff Passan story about Alec Bohm momentarily. But I ultimately feel pretty good about the direction things could go because I think it can go a lot of different ways.
So a negativity about what precisely? That is the negativity simply that there is a greater than zero chance that this team will be a run it back type of organization this year?
Yeah, I think a little bit of run it back, a little bit of strikeout on the big targets. And then, that leads us into our left field free agent class today. Like if you're not getting one of those top 2 or 3 guys, the list becomes bleak quickly. And then it becomes, are you addressing this through trade? And being creative is difficult. So I just think there's a lot of balls in the air right now and people don't really know how to feel.
Yeah, I think free agency is pretty top heavy this year. There's like, I don't know, 8 to 10 names that are legit, bona fide stars or stars in the making. And then it's a lot of journeymen. It's a lot of young, I shouldn't say young guys. It's a lot of
31 to 33-year-olds.
It's, guys that might have been fourth outfielders or guys that were starters on bad teams. It's, there's a lot of top heavy talent,
guys.
Right? There's no doubt, right? You've got Juan Soto, you've got Corbin Burns, you've got Max Fried, you've got Teoscar Hernandez, you've got Anthony Santander. But I think a lot of the names that, teams are going to sign this year are going to be the Tommy Phams of the world. They're going to be, middle leverage relievers. They're going to be back end of the rotation starters. There's some really good talent, but a lot of the free agent market is, it's average, I think.
Yeah, to say the least. And we each, I gave us each a homework assignment of kind of find that third tier, maybe outfielder bust out guy that we wouldn't mind seeing if all else kind of fails. So we'll get to that. But let's start with Jeff Passan. He's the best in Major League Baseball. In my opinion, he's the most tied in, most informed, and he dropped a hammer of a story today. Would you like to start with the Alec Bohm aspect or the this guy named Juan Soto aspect of it?
Yeah, I've heard of him. He's pretty good. Why don't we start with the Alec Bohm stuff? We've talked a ton about Juan Soto as of late.
Yeah. So we heard this from Matt Gelb last week from The Athletic that he was possibly on the table. We kind of started talking about it as soon as the season ended, that if you wanted to get spicy in the trade market, Alec Bohm and Ranger Suarez are your two most appealing pieces to an open market in terms of your return. Here is what Jeff Passan on ESPN Plus had to say this morning about our own Alec Bohm. He mentioned him in the trade category of the offseason. Quote, Alec Bohm, third baseman, coming off a career-best season. The 28-year-old Bohm nonetheless finds himself on the trade block. While he was a well-above-average hitter with a slash line of 280, 332, 448, with 61 extra base hits, the first half OPS was nearly 150 points higher than in the second half, and the Phillies are looking to shake up their team after a disappointing postseason ouster by the Mets. That is blunt. That is direct. Alec Bohm, not that we didn't know this, officially on the trade block.
Yeah, I mean, I think you brought up two of the three guys that were the most viable to be moved this offseason, the third probably being Brandon Marsh. Contracts are favorable. Arbitration for a lot of these guys. Rangers is a little less favorable, obviously, heading into his final year of arbitration. He'll be a free agent at the end of next season, correct?
Ranger, yes, he has one more.
Yeah, so, I mean, he's a little less favorable, but Marsh's contract is very team-friendly for quite some time. Alec Bohm has this year and next year for arbitration, won't become a free agent until the end of the 2026 season. There's going to be intrigue.
And you're probably paying him like 11 next year, maybe 10 and a half, 11,
$9 to $11 million range. And that means if he plays productively again next season, you're probably talking about 13 to 15 in the final year of arbitration. And it kind of goes back to the point that Jim Salisbury was talking about with us a couple weeks ago, where yes, they're going to be active in the Alec Bohm trade market, because I think if there is a way to shake up a lineup, that's one of the viable options to move from the team last year. The inverse of that can also be, I think you need to find a suitable replacement that maybe doesn't match productivity, but to use the phrase of Moneyball, to like recreate them in the aggregate, where you have that. And then on top of it, you are also talking about, can you find a viable, I'm not asking Alec Bohm to be an all-star. Last year's first half of the season was tremendous. You said OPS was 100 points lower, more than 100 points lower.
150 higher,
in the second half than it was in the first half. I'm not asking Alec Bohm to be an all-star, but he is a viable everyday third baseman. Do you have enough belief in whomever, if you do make a move for Alec Bohm, do you have enough belief in whomever is going to be, at least in the short-term decision of this team? Are they worth the $11 million that you're going to have, that you were going to allocate to them? And are they, on par at least with Alec Bohm? And if the answer to either of those questions is no, I'm not so sure they're going, I think that it was blunt, but I'm not so sure they're going to immediately jump the gun and make a move for Alec Bohm.
No, they're not. Certainly, he's not a player you move just to move. But I think one of the concerns with the Phillies is Bohm, and as Mopar is saying here in the chat, is that falling off a cliff second half. And Trey Turner also kind of fell off a cliff. A lot of guys fell off the cliff. So maybe there's just an inherent feeling internally that okay, one or two guys, we can deal with some streakiness. The Yankees got to a World Series with Aaron Judge having an awful playoffs. It is possible, but we just can't have 4 or 5 guys with the possibility of falling off a cliff again. And you can't move Turner. Not many teams out there are probably going to want that contract. So Bohm becomes, one of those guys. And the question is, you're right about the replacement player. I don't think that person's on the roster. I don't think you can start Edmundo Sosa as an everyday third baseman. He's a perfect platoon guy, utility man for your infield. So the question then becomes, what are you pairing third base with? If you move on from Alec Bohm, are you improving the offense lost from Bohm at left field, and it's not as productive as third base? So that's an interesting question, what you trade him for, who you replace, or who you upgrade elsewhere with. So it becomes an interesting kind of team construct dynamic here.
Yeah, and that's why, to me, I think if you're looking at productivity at the third base position, where does it offset somewhere else? And who are you acquiring? Obviously, we won't know.
It would have to be outfield, right?
Right. I would assume it's an everyday left fielder or an everyday center fielder, where Brandon Marsh becomes your de facto everyday
Luis Robert. Oh,
so
excuse me.
It depends on what the productivity level in return is. The other option, I guess, would be that Alec Bohm is a trade piece for a legit starting pitcher.
Luis Robert.
I think less likely, but I would imagine that those are the two things that the Phillies are looking for in exchange for an Alec Bohm. They're not going to easily move off of Alec Bohm. They'll do it.
No, because he's got good value.
Right, but it's got to be for the right price. It's got to be for the right return. They're not going to do it for a couple of prospects. I just think that would be a foolish endeavor. They're going to do it for major league caliber players. And again, whether that be starting pitching or a starting outfielder, either a left fielder or a center fielder, that to me is probably the only viable option. I think that Alec Bohm is the Phillies starting third baseman in 2025. I would be
right now.
It is. I would be.
I think he's gone.
I would be really kind of shocked if he's not. I think that if you're moving from an everyday player or a pseudo everyday player, the likelihood is you're moving Brandon Marsh. I wouldn't be stunned if they moved Ranger Suarez. I think it would be short-sighted because their pitching depth is a little bit tested with not having a 5 right now and Andrew Painter not being available just yet, unless they have a bigger plan in place for that, or they're acquiring a starter sometime in the offseason. But right now, I do think that if you were to ask me to look into the crystal ball, who is the starting third baseman for the Phillies in 2025, I think it's Alec Bohm. I don't know if he's the starting third baseman in 2026, but I think with 2 years of arbitration left, I'm not quite sure they're going to be easily moved off of Alec Bohm at third base.
Yeah, very interesting story from Jeff Passan today. Kind of mapped out the entire, off season for Major League Baseball, free agents, trade possibilities. Of course, Juan Soto. Yeah, Don Corleone says, there's nothing out there that's cheap and all-star caliber like Bohm is.
That's my
yeah,
point.
But then yeah, absolutely not. That's not an easy thing to fill. But if you can fill with, say, a 1.5 WAR third baseman that gives you decent offensive numbers, and you can massively upgrade left field and maybe get a right-handed bat that protects Bryce Harper in this lineup, then it becomes the conversation worth having and discussing. So
but for if you went to free agency and offered $11 million to a starting caliber third baseman, like if you said to Alex Bregman, here's $11 million.
He laughs at you.
He's going to laugh at you. He's going to turn you down. Yeah. He's going to tell you to go kick rocks.
No, you're likely not going to match Bohm's productivity at third,
especially for the money that he's going to make. Like, listen, $11 million isn't nothing, but in the grand scheme of things, like if you look around the construct of baseball and what starting caliber third basemen are making, who are on free agent type of contracts, who have signed deals. And I'm not saying Alec Bohm has yet. Obviously, he still has the 2 years of arbitration. But if you look around the league, like, you're not going to get anybody for $11 million that provides you the productivity that Alec Bohm did for a majority of the season. Yes, I know his second half was a dip for sure. But I think that he's improved defensively. If he can be baseline somewhere in the middle of what he was this year, maybe not at the peak and not at the valley, somewhere in between, where he's going to get you 30, 35 doubles and he's going to hit 270 and he's going to play you, baseline defense, I'm not so sure you find anybody on the open market for that kind of value.
No, but are you moving Alec Bohm for Garrett Crochet? And it's not a 1-for-1. You'd obviously have to throw in.
That's the conversation, right? Is it a Garrett Crochet? Is it a starting caliber left fielder? Then the conversation gets a little bit more difficult to maneuver. If you're just saying on the surface it's Alec Bohm, they're going to move Alec Bohm to shake things up, that's a silly endeavor.
Would you 1-for-1 Alec Bohm for Luis Robert? I know that's not a typical trade. It probably hasn't happened. Barroom discussion right here, right now. Luis Robert, I think, is due around $20 million, so he's more expensive. The White Sox have said they're looking for position players in return for either a Crochet or a Luis Robert. Would you 1-for-1 it in this barroom discussion?
I don't know. I mean,
Larry's with me.
The untapped.
I think I would.
The untapped potential of Luis Robert is higher than Alec Bohm. There's no question about it. Like when he's
healthy, at a buy low point.
Sure. When he stays healthy, and that's a big if because he hasn't for a majority of his career. You saw it in 2023, 35 plus home runs. The average was high. The strikeout rate was better than it was last year. And his strikeout rate's always going to be high. He strikes out a lot. But the pop is there. The defense is there in center field. I think my immediate gut reaction is probably no, just because of the injury history. But it's a consideration.
That's the biggest concern. To me, I really want to take advantage of the White Sox. They're a trash organization. They're a bunch of dumbasses. And I think Luis Robert is a guy that, look, when we had this conversation a year ago about him in the offseason, it was like, wow, his value, you'd have to pay out the wazoo to get him.
The farm system for a guy like that.
Yeah. And now you're at a point where, he's kind of at a low. And I think loser organizations breed loser players and loser tendencies. And I think Luis Robert is prime change the scenery in a good veteran locker room where guys play through injuries, where Nick Castellanos is playing every single game, where Bryce Harper's busting his ass and Trey Turner's a dirt dog and Kyle Schwarber. I just think there's a immense potential there. The injury is my biggest concern. I think he's a guy that you can kind of, vulture from a trash organization and buy low now. So I'm kind of back on the Luis Robert trade.
I wonder, we see it in the NFL a lot where it's like these guys have a lingering injury or, they're just not productive on a bad team. We saw it with DeAndre Hopkins. We saw it with Devontae Adams. Now, Devontae Adams hasn't been super productive with the Jets, but that's just a product of going from one dysfunctional organization to the other. But, you see with DeAndre Hopkins most recently where, he leaves Tennessee, he goes to Houston, he's productive pretty much right away. I think that there is merit to.
So you're saying we can be Luis Roberts, Patrick Mahomes?
Sure, if you want to put words in my mouth, sure.
Is that I think that's the comp you're
I
making
think
here.
anybody that plays for a bad organization, I think that there is a rejuvenation of life when you go to a good organization. I mean,
100%.
you think about even like, and this is going to be ridiculous because he'd be good if he played for the Dodgers, the Angels, or a pickup game down the street. Shohei Ohtani went to an organization that was winning and helped them win even more. Right?
Yeah.
Like, now granted, again, Ohtani would be good if he batted with his eyes closed and swung backwards. He's just that good. But my point is, like, there is a revitalization and a love of the game and a want to play type of feel when you do go from a bad organization to a good organization. And the inverse can also be true. I mean, remember the video of Miguel Vargas sulking in the dugout in Oakland because the White Sox were so bad. He gets traded from the Dodgers to the White Sox in the Kopech deal.
That's tough.
And he looks miserable, right? So I think the inverse can also be true.
Absolutely. Let's take a quick moment and tell you about some of our friends here, and then we'll dive into what Passan said about the Soto offseason sweepstakes heating up, and then we'll get into some top left fielders. And let me tell you about our friends at Miller Lite. I went down to see some pucks last night in South Philadelphia, and they had a Miller Lite tall boy waiting for me at the bar, and I said, oh, yeah, this is how we hockey. But whether it's friends and family gathering, the holidays are coming up, I'm going to have the beer fridge stocked with Miller Lites because it's a beer drinker's light beer. It's the original light beer since 1975, and to this day, it's still the best one. And why is that? Because they haven't gotten over their skis. They just keep it simple. They get rid of everything you don't need, and they hold on to what matters most. And that's a beer that simply tastes like a beer should taste. It's the original light beer since 1975. And to this day, it is still the best one. The original since 1975. And you don't have to choose what's best. Miller Lite has great taste and is less filling. Tastes like Miller time. To get Miller Lite delivered right to your door, visit MillerLite.com/PHLY Phillies, or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories per 12 ounces, fewer calories and carbs than premium regular beer.
Yeah, and you'll have a couple extra bucks for a couple extra Miller Lites down at the ballpark or at the stadium, Jamie, when you head on over to TrueMark and get involved with our friends at TrueMark, because they're not just a cookie cutter bank that's just going to take your money and tell you to be on your way. They're here for you, and they are here to make things easier for you. And one of the beautiful things about TrueMark is if you're traveling, let's say you're going to an away game, the Flyers and Sixers are on the road and you want to go see the team, you're going on vacation, whatever the case may be, it is easy to help keep track of your spending with the TrueMark Financial mobile app. So what their app allows you to do is access your funds anywhere at any time. You can check your balances, view your transactions. You can make a transfer. You can pay your bills. Listen, I understand sometimes you're on vacation and a bill is due and you go, oh my goodness, I got to pay this bill. And it ends up getting late. Well, don't worry about it with TrueMark Financial. You have all of that convenience right on your phone. So whether you're at a ballpark or at on vacation or whatever the case may be, TrueMark is always with you. You can also add all of your cards to your mobile wallet for easy in-store and online purchases. Also, if you're looking to buy a house, TrueMark Financial's mortgage specialists have the ability to offer you guidance on loan options and terms. I've started to kind of look into it. There's a lot I don't understand. TrueMark has helped me kind of get some footing in buying a home and what it means to buy a home and how do you assess your finances, how do you look at your credit score, those type of things. They'll also help you save for your down payment and budget for your closing costs as well. TrueMark Financial is federally insured by the NCUA and is an equal opportunity lender. For more information, visit TrueMark.com/PHLY.
Yeah, this is the PHLY Phillies podcast. Shout out to everybody in the chat. K-Red, Pat, Mopar. I saw Blanche Devereaux in there talking about how she loves, MLB offseason. Don Corleone, Pat Ryan. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Larry, of course, and Mopar and Chris. We appreciate everybody that's in here chewing the fat on a little MLB hot stove. All right, so it's nice, and I always like when I throw on the MLB Network and they got the hot stove show going, and they just buzz around to a bunch of different reporters, and they get kind of like the latest rumor mill from each city. I was just watching a guy up in Boston saying that the Red Sox are going to be very involved in Garrett Crochet, and Cassis could be a guy that they put on the block there. So hot stove starting to heat up a little bit. Juan Soto is officially taking meetings, Tyler. He is out in California, and he is going to kick off the come to the tables. And first up, according to Jeff Passan, the Toronto Blue Jays. They said the Blue Jays are desperate to pair Vlad Jr. with another superstar. They've long been in the big fish game in free agency, not yet able to land one, but Juan Soto gives the first presentation to the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, so real quick to go back to what you said at the beginning about the hot stove and kind of everything heating up a little bit. Every fan base either is everything sucks or everything is awesome, and you kind of fluctuate maybe within the day.
There's no gray area
within the week. No, it's either the greatest thing ever and you're signing all the good players, or no one is signing with your team and everybody hates your city and it's misery. Yeah, I mean, Juan Soto is going to take his calls from just about every team this year and this offseason, and it makes sense. You're going to get wined and dined, and you're going to get a game plan of what the future might hold with you in the lineup hitting second or hitting third or whatever the case may be. And here's the thing: Toronto's intriguing. I don't believe he's signing with Toronto, but Toronto is intriguing
Canadian
because
taxes suck.
There's talent in Toronto. Vlad Guerrero Jr. I know Bo Bichette had a down year offensively, but I would expect him to bounce back. There is a lot of talent on that team. It's a weird dynamic because it's a team that we've talked about in the past that kind of is up against the wall in terms of this core's, semblance.
Baby Blue Jays.
And they talked about the like you said, the baby Blue Jays are not babies anymore. Vlad's a legit MVP candidate. Bo Bichette's a really darn good player.
Biggio's gone.
They've moved Biggio. They've started to move off some other pieces. We talked about Jimmy Garcia at the beginning of the year. And when I was talking to Blue Jays fans at the beginning of the year, they're like, no freaking way they're moving this guy. They're going to be a playoff contender. And then they ended up trading him at the deadline. They trade Danny Jansen. It's been a weird dynamic for this team that really hasn't produced it the way that a lot of pundits and fans had expected. I thought last year was their breaking point. They seem to be they're willing to run it back one more year. I'm not so sure if they don't get a move done and they don't play good baseball out of the gate, you're going to start hearing conversations about moving Bichette. I don't think they move Vlad, but I think Bichette's name will come up quite a bit this year. I think that their backs are kind of up against the wall, especially with how good the AL East is. The Yankees just went to the World Series. The Orioles are, continually a pitcher or two away from being legit. I think the Red Sox have a lot of aspirations of getting good sooner rather than later.
So you segued right into it. The Red Sox are the next team after the Blue Jays to meet with Soto out in California. Yeah. Apparently, I was just watching the guy on Hot Stove today, and he said, John Henry is saying that his fans have waited too long for those top dynamic type players, and they're going to be both after Juan Soto in the position player market and also a starting pitcher, and that's where the Garrett Crochet mention came for the Red Sox as well. I don't think Toronto has a real shot. Boston, I mean, you can't rule out, but they also haven't been spending money like that recently. I wonder if that hurts them a little bit in this discussion. We'll see, but I can't rule out Boston, but they're second up.
Yeah, I mean, again, you're going to get teams that are across the board are going to have these meetings, and they're going to throw multiple Brinks trucks worth of money at Juan Soto. I think Boston is probably going to be better. I think they outperformed my expectations in 2024, and that was probably on the strength of a pitching staff that was better than we expected, and a couple of guys who took steps in the right direction. Do they re-sign a Tyler O'Neill? Do they, does Nick Pivetta get a long-term deal? He got the qualifying offer. I think a lot is up in the air still for that team, but Zidane Rafaela has shown that he's a very good ball player. Tristan Casas is an interesting name, as you brought up, might be a trade block candidate for a bona fide number 1 or number 2 starting pitcher. I think that they're an intriguing team heading into 25. Again, not a team that I think is immediately ready to compete for the Juan Soto sweepstakes.
Yeah, so they're the first two up, and then Passan says Yankees and Mets will be after that. He does go on to mention that the Dodgers are not going to pursue Soto. They're kind of priced out of that one. He mentions the Tampa Bay Rays, although let me read the exact wording. It was kind of funny because I don't think anybody really believes the Tampa Bay Rays are serious contenders for Juan Soto. But he said the Tampa Bay.
Are Juan Soto's grandkids going to get some of that contract? They're going to defer for like 45 years.
Yeah. He says the Tampa Bay Rays always appreciate unique players. They were genuinely heavy on Freddie Freeman during his free agency, but the prospect of them guaranteeing $600 million plus when they've spent that in their past 8 years worth of teams is dubious. So even Jeff Passan's like, yeah, that one ain't happening. So basically, Nothing incredibly new, except that Boston and Toronto are kind of all in, and it's just are they worthy of his consideration?
Yeah, I mean, listen, these teams are even the poorer teams, right? The teams that don't spend a lot of money, they're going to make the phone call, right? The Rays are going to call, the Reds are going to call. You know, I think that they'd be silly not to. I don't think Juan Soto is going to seriously entertain these phone calls for much longer, other than the fact that they may say, hey, we'll give you $800 million and we're getting an investment from, you know, we struck gold somewhere and we're getting an investment. But yeah, I think every team is going to make a phone call, right? It would make sense.
He does not mention the Phillies in Juan Soto portion of the story. So just so we're out there. Now, the quote last week, I believe, from Matt Gelb was John Middleton said he will be a stalking horse of the Juan Soto sweepstakes, but it does seem incredibly unlikely.
Yeah, again, I
think I'm back under 5% again.
We've all been saying this for a while now, where it's just a very unlikely conversation and a very unlikely match for this team, this team and this player. Of course, it would be lovely. Everybody wants Juan Soto on their baseball team.
Yeah, it'd be great.
I just don't think it's I just don't think it's a match that's going to work out for this team this particular offseason. If Juan Soto would have become a free agent after the 2027 season, I think they would have thrown $1 billion at him because, you know, some of the current guys on the roster would have come off the books and they would have at least had gotten different contracts or maybe don't resign. The Phillies are just in a difficult monetary spot unless they do decide to just say, bleep it, we're going way past the luxury threshold and we don't care about how much we're going to get taxed for this one particular player.
That third tier is brutal. Like everything becomes so much more expensive.
50%, 100% after a certain amount of years. You're basically paying $1 for $1.
Yeah. Yeah, it gets crazy. Now Jeff Passan goes on to mention some stock up hitters, and 3 of the guys are outfielders, and that's going to lead us into our kind of left field free agency. We're going to go position by position. Some are going to be longer than others. Obviously, like the catcher free agency market is not something we're going to spend a ton of time talking about. Left field is the obvious upgrade in free agency, or probably just team needs. So we'll talk about these stock up hitters next from Jeff Passan and some of the top bats out there and left fielders after we tell you some more about our friends here at PHLY. Oh, it's you, Tyler, first with Miller Lite.
Okay. I guess I should probably do my job here, right? Yeah, now I'm scrambling. Who are we talking about now?
You're talking about, I closed the log.
Yeah, I'm
Let me check my text I sent you.
Because I've been telling you about them with John Marks, and John is a big proponent of them as well. Glad is going to tell you that, bald is now optional. And if you're looking for a new rejuvenated feel to your hairstyle, if you have a little bit of thinning, a little bit of a receding hairline, Glad is here for you. If you want to improve how you look and how you feel about yourself, Glad has the right treatment for you. You're going to regain your confidence, going to make you feel better, because Glad isn't just about restoration. It's about innovation. Their breakthrough treatments really do dramatically change lives. I work with John Marks every day. He raves about this company and about the work that Glad has done. He gets his TED treatments every year, non-invasive TED treatments. You get work with laser light therapy, vitamin supplements, topical medication. Depending on what your needs are, they are going to approach this as you as an individual, and they're going to do what's best for you, your hairline, your health, your mental health, and they're going to do whatever they can to make you feel like a new person. So if you're looking to regain your confidence, visit glatthairmctr.com or call 610-980-4000 to get started with Glatt Hair Restoration by the Morgenstern Medical Company.
Yeah, and let me tell you about my friends over at Bet365. You can find out why. It's never ordinary at Bet365. They have 90 million users worldwide. That many people can't be wrong. They stream over 780,000 events every year, and they have the best early payout offers across the NBA, NFL, NHL, and Major League Baseball. Whatever the criteria is in said sport, you hit that number, cashed out, boom, right then and there on the spot. You don't even have to wait till the end of the game to get your winnings. Bet365 pioneered live in-game betting. They offer the widest range of games and markets available for live in-game betting across 78 sports. And right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Use the promo code PHLY365 at sign up, deposit $10. Place a bet for $5, and you can get $150 in bonus bets. Bonus bets can be used on spreads, totals, player props, futures, and more. So it's just awesome at Bet365. Every day, they're powering up the odds on bets with over 10,000 boosts every single month. And make sure on Sundays and soon Sixers and Flyers, you're keeping your eye out for our custom PHLY odds boosts. So download the Bet365 app, use code PHLY365 when you sign up, and get that $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and physically located in PA. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let's get into it. Left field, Matt Gelb said it last week on The Athletic. It's the most obvious area to upgrade the team. I don't need to be a real baseball guy to see that one. Austin Hayes, I think, nobody, even though there was an option remaining, really has a desire for him to be run back as the opening day left fielder next year. So you start to look at the free agent market. Juan Soto, we don't have to say anything, right? Like, it's not going to happen. He's a great player. Who's the next best left field option? And Tyler, let's start with Jeff Passan's guys that he names in this story. It'll kind of segue us right into all of this. Now, in the story, he did a stock up hitters.
Okay.
The first four guys he names are 3/4 of them are outfielders. He starts with Teoscar Hernandez, who's coming off, this World Series he was just on last year. We talked about him last year. My personal feeling is there's no bad one-year contracts in baseball, and Teoscar Hernandez ended up being a great signing for the Dodgers.
I believe in transparency and you should be able to be excited when you get stuff right, and you should be transparent when you get stuff wrong. You didn't like his K rate, right? That was the big thing with you. With Teoscar Hernandez, the strikeout rate was through the roof. At the time I was looking at a team that already had, especially how things transpired in the LCS. I was concerned about another free swinging outfield, guy with good pop, don't get me wrong, but a free swinging outfielder who, his chase rate was high and his K rate was high. And Teoscar Hernandez bet on himself last year by signing that 1 year, $20 million deal, or 21 or whatever it was, with the Dodgers. He's going to make a lot of money this offseason. And it's because of the fact that he was massively productive with runners in scoring position this season. He had the second best walk rate of his career. His chase rate, which still wasn't good, but it improved significantly. His whiff rate was better. His swing outside the zone, again, kind of playing with the chase rate conversation, was much better. And because of the fact that he was, surrounded by talent, he got pitched to more frequently than maybe he did in Toronto or did in Seattle. And he took advantage. It was a career year for Teoscar Hernandez, who, again, I was not super excited about the potential of bringing in. And then you see how last year unfolds with Brandon Marsh struggling offensively, with Austin Hayes coming over, and, obviously with the infection and the injury and really not kind of getting anything going. They're trying to pluck anything from David Dahl and Weston Wilson and all of these, quad A guys. Like, the Phillies would have killed for Teoscar Hernandez. I think the Phillies would have killed for 2 years ago, Teoscar Hernandez, let alone what Teoscar Hernandez did this past season. He probably slots in as your 5-hitter every day for 150 plus games last year. You're not worried nearly as much about the productivity. And, I think that they would have been in a much better shape with him. He's going to make a ton of money this offseason. I'm not sure the Phillies are going to be able to compete with the suitors that are probably going to give him, 4 years and $100 million type contract.
So the Phillies are not mentioned with Jeff Passan's blurb here on him. He is 32 years old. It becomes tough when you look at the free agents because a lot of these guys are that 31 to 33, 34. Ideally, in a utopian Phillies offseason, you'd like to add younger to this core, not guys that are 32 plus. But he does say the Dodgers are the favorites to bring him back where he thrived in 2024. Boston is also in, so is Baltimore, and the Yankees want him if they lose Soto, though he could have already signed by the time New York knows where Soto is going. Chances are, Jeff Passan says, Teoscar will be one of the first big names off the board. The next guy,
I think that, you've got a guy who isn't the biggest name, but he is a pretty productive name. 33 home runs last year. Again, the average went up 14 points. OBP went up almost 35 points. Baltimore is interesting because Baltimore,
especially because they're losing Santander, most likely.
So you would think about, we talk about how they pushed that left field wall back, and would it have been, how many home runs would he have hit if
the bird bath?
So he hit 33 last year. Or no, sorry, he hit 36 last year. He still would have hit 30 in Baltimore. That's still a pretty productive number. To compare it to his highest total, if he played all of his games in any of these ballparks, would have been Cincinnati. He would have hit 43. But the 30 still would have been a really productive year in Baltimore. I'd be curious to see if Baltimore, if Santander does walk, if Hernandez is their turning point.
So the next guy on the list in the stock up hitters portion of the story.
I apologize. The only thing I will say is I don't know if they want to officially just completely turn things over to their younger core. I don't know if it means like a Colton Cowser type of player gets an everyday opportunity, or Colby Mayo.
You needed some vets in there,
and they start moving guys around. I'm curious if they go with a younger core, or if they do decide to go with another vet.
I think you need a vet to show the young guys, to quote The Mandalorian, this is the way. So the next guy up is Anthony Santander. He's probably my number one option. His on base isn't great. His discipline, is okay, but what he has is pop. And he was second in the AL to this guy named Aaron Judge last year in home runs. He had 44 of them. A switch hitter to me is so damn intriguing, and one with pop. I desperately think a right-handed power bat is needed for this team. So Anthony Santander is my top option. Jeff Passan goes on to say he's a switch hitter. His 44 home runs rank second to just Judge. He is a welcomed clubhouse presence. At age 30, Santander has been a consistent 2 to 3 win player each year for the past 3 years, and he brings big power in what's expected to be a sub $100 million price tag due to that low on base percentage. He's drawing interest from lower revenue teams as well as the big boys.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously going to be a big-time player in free agency this year. 44 home runs is a number that jumps out to you, just about any player. But you're right. The strikeout rate is pretty high, which is funny. I should say the chase rate is high, but the strikeout rate's not as bad as people perceive it to be. He chases a lot. 34% of the time he's chasing outside the zone, but he's in the 66th percentile of strikeout rate. He struck out about 19% of his at-bats this year. He whiffs just about 20% of the time, which is in the 76th percentile. He's a super intriguing name for a lot of teams. Much better pop from the from the left side than from the right side. Now, he did have 430 at bats against righties and only 160 against lefties, but he hit 12 home runs against lefties, 32 against right-handed pitching. Obviously, there was a method there, and he faced a lot more right-handed pitchers than he did left-handed pitchers. OBP is just about the same for both sides of the plate. Average is about the same for both sides of the plate. It's really the slugging and the OPS is where it kind of comes into play, where he's much better as a left-handed hitter against right-handed pitching than he is as a right-handed hitter against left-handed pitching in those two regards. I think that this is another guy the Phillies are not going to be monetarily interested in, despite the fact that the pop is certainly there. I don't want to be the guy that sits here and says they do nothing this offseason, because I do think they do something with the left field position, but I think it's more likely that with the monetary, even if it is sub $100 million,
I agree with you.
Value of a Teoscar Hernandez and an Anthony Santander, I think the more likely avenue, and maybe this plays back into an Alec Bohm potential trade, is that there are more players in the trade market for a starting left fielder than they are in the free agent market for a starting left fielder.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Anthony Santander is kind of pipe dreamish almost, because look, it's sub 100 million in today's game. That's, kind of affordable. Worth noting also that Teoscar Hernandez and Anthony Santander are brutal fielders. Both have good arms, but you are sacrificing some defense if you are trying to bring in that kind of pop to replace left field. Brandon Marsh is a very good left fielder. He's a above average center fielder, but you're going to be taking a drop off of left field with either of those two guys. Now, the next name that Jeff Passan names as a what did he call it again? Stock up hitter is Jurickson Profar. And Renee's on vacation right now, so we can talk about her man. Jurickson Profar, he goes on to say, he ranks 7th in Major League Baseball in on-base percentage. I would imagine that intrigues the Phillies a lot. Behind Judge, Soto, Guerrero, Yordan Alvarez, Ohtani, and Bobby Witt Jr., pretty good company. He had a career-high 24 home runs and is a switch hitter with 88th percentile strikeout rate. Profar, who turns 32 before opening day, checks boxes for a lot of teams. Now, he is kind of the ideal free agent replacement. Does he leave a what appears to be now a cool Padres team? Do they meet his open market value price? I think Jurickson Profar would be, if you were just making a left field signing, the ideal fit for the Phillies here this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, this guy had a career year, and in terms of years that he played full seasons, 158 games of 162 last year, had almost 700 plate appearances, 158 hits was a career high, 76 walks was a career high, just 101 strikeouts in 564 at bats this season. On base percentage of near 400 at 380, a 280 average. His OPS was through the roof compared to his career average of 726. His OPS was 839 last year. He doesn't chase. He doesn't whiff. He doesn't strike out. His walk rate was
what the Phillies need.
all of those four stats were in the 88th percentile or better this year. Chase rate and whiff rate were in the 90th percentile. Does he duplicate what he did last year? I don't know if it's spot on, number for number he duplicates it, but he showed a clear change in approach over probably the last two seasons. I think if you go back to 2023, his year with Colorado kind of started off a little bit slower. He only hit 236 in the 100+ games that he played there, but he ended up with a 321 OBP, considering the fact that it was, almost down at 290 at one point in 2023. His approach kind of shifted when he got to San Diego, and it's kind of the mantra of the Padres. It's a team that doesn't strike out a lot. It's a team that puts the ball in play a lot. It's a team that will, kind of single you to death. Now, granted, they forgot how to hit in the NLDS for 3 straight games, and maybe that's a
it's not just us.
Yeah, apparently not. Maybe that's kudos to Dodgers pitching more than it is against them, or a combination of the two. But if you're looking for a guy that fits a mold that the Phillies are looking for in terms of good contact, low strikeout rate, a little bit of pop, going to get on base, even if he's not 380 next year and it's more like 350 or 360, as long as the strikeout rate stays low, as long as the chase rate, the whiff rate stay low, all of those things that trended in the right direction for the Phillies, for Profar this past season, I think that is an ideal candidate for the Phillies offensively. Now, defensively, he's a -7 in range factor. His outs above replacement is not good. He's in the 7th percentile.
I've seen Kyle Schwarber and Rhys Hoskins play left field in the past 7-8 years. I'm okay with bad left field defense. I think you can survive it. It's not ideal, but if the offense outweighs the defense by that much, I don't really blink twice at it.
Yeah, I think
especially if you have Rojas. Like if you get an upgrade in left field, then you have Rojas to their left, and that does help, cut some of their field area down.
Yeah, and elephant in the room brings up the good point. Are those numbers repeatable? I don't know. We're gonna have to find out.
Contract year.
I think unfortunately, you're going to have to pay the guy to find out. And whether it's the Phillies or another team, you're going to have to pay the guy to find out. In terms of where he would slot well in this lineup, anywhere, anywhere from hitting maybe 2nd to hitting 7th to hitting, in the 5 hole. I'm trying to find where his splits last year, where he hit in the lineup. It was primarily 2nd and 3rd. He hit,
I was going to say he was top 3rd, yeah. Nearly
200 at bats as the two-hole hitter, 184 as the 3-hole hitter. He was much more productive as the 3-hole hitter. Actually, he hit 304 batting 3rd. He had 216 batting 2nd. But if you're looking for a guy who you kind of could plug and play wherever you want him to in the lineup, this is probably, if you're looking to spend money, this is going to be the guy that I think a lot of people would be intrigued by.
Next up on the stock up hitter list is outfielder Tyler O'Neill. He's a name that we discussed at the trade deadline. If he became available, we've talked about him a bunch. Jeff Passan goes on to say, Judge was the best hitter in the majors against left-handed pitching this year. O'Neill wasn't far behind. In 156 plate appearances against lefties, Tyler O'Neill hit 16 home runs and slashed .313, .429, .750 with the highest slugging percentage in Major League Baseball. The Red Sox would like to bring him back, and he would fit with the Giants and Tigers as well. Again, the teams he mentions are not mistakes. He's not just throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. I'm sure he's hearing about those teams. Tyler O'Neill is a guy that I think a lot of Phillies fans, whether in our Discord or I've seen online, would kind of be okay with. I mean, I'd be fine with them because you need a left fielder, right? You're not going to play with 8 guys in the field. So I'd be okay with it. I'm not kicking down the door to get him. He'd be fine. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I was a little surprised that the Red Sox didn't offer him the qualifying offer, but they did offer Pivetta the qualifying offer. And I think, what was it this year, Jamie? 20 and a half or 21, $21 million, something like that. So what that tells me is the Red Sox, in their eyes, which their estimations, to be fair, have not been very good over the last couple of years, except for having Tyler O'Neill on the roster. They value him maybe at the $17 million a year range. But you brought it up. He mashes left-handed pitching, but he really struggled against right-handed pitching this year. He had 159 strikeouts this season. 110 of them were against right-handed pitching. Does he stay healthy? I don't know. That's a huge question mark. We know
that's what Don Corleone says in the chat. He says, and he's kind of injury-prone guy.
He hits bombs when he plays. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. He's productive when he plays. He wasn't particularly good with runners in scoring position this past year, but that could be a product of the offense around him. Equally. Sure. There's probably a balance to that. He mashes against one side of the plate. He really struggles against right-handed pitching. Do you want a guy who really only hits one side of the plate for $18 million, $18 million a year? I don't know. Again, these are a lot of names that are intriguing to a lot of teams, and I'm not quite sure, with the exception of Jurickson Profar, which of those guys so far monetarily fits the bill for the Phillies. If you said to me the Phillies are going to sign Teoscar Hernandez, I'd sign up for it in a heartbeat. Sure. I just don't think they're going to be in play money-wise. I think that he's going to get a lot. I think O'Neill gets a lot. I think Santander gets a lot, to a different varying degree of money. I just don't know how big of players they're going to be monetarily speaking.
Considering what Barbara Carroll says in the chat is he's very muscular and cute. So, that could be a driving force in getting the deal done. The cuteness factor, we can't underestimate, Tyler.
Well, we know how you feel about getting the contract done with Ranger because of that.
Just want to squeeze his cheeks. All right, next up on the list from Jeff Passan, he was a Philly for 30 minutes, we thought, last offseason. Jock Peterson as a stock up bat. Here's what he says about Jock Peterson. Peterson is the right-handed O'Neill and brings with him the sort of clubhouse presence that teams crave. In 407 plate appearances against right-handed pitching, Peterson hit 281, 392, 531 with 22 home runs. Like O'Neill, though, he warrants a multi-year deal.
It was a sneaky good season for Jock Peterson.
It was. Like, I'd be, again, much like Tyler O'Neill, I'd be okay with it. I'm not doing naked cartwheels down Broad Street.
Well, I think that the storyline, the book on Jock Peterson is extremely obvious, right? And it's been that way for a bulk of his career. He doesn't hit left-handed pitching. He mashes right-handed pitching. As you said, 22 of his 23 home runs came against
another bad
righties.
defensive player.
Yeah, is not much of a defender. Hits fastballs extremely well. Hit 312 off fastballs last year, and had a put-away rate on fastballs of just 21%, which is pretty darn good. Struggled with breaking pitches this season. Just 13 extra base hits against breaking balls this season. Hit 193 against the breaking ball. Exit velo is always towards the top of the league. He smokes the ball when he does barrel it up, but he also doesn't barrel it up all that frequently. He only had 34 barrels this year. His squared up percentage was below the 30th percentile. A guy who had a sneaky good statistical year, and it's kind of one of those things where it's like, what does the eye test tell you versus what is the stats tell you? He's not a left fielder to me. He is a DH, in my opinion. I just would
That's what the chat is saying.
Would not
in the
feel
room
comfortable with him.
We have enough of those.
I just think,
and he's a platoon player, like ultimately, right? Like with his splits, him and Tyler O'Neill ideally are platoon players.
I think O'Neill is more of an everyday player than Peterson is, but yes, I think they're one-sided. And if you have, one-sided pop and no defense versus one-sided defense with little pop with Brandon Marsh, and you're paying Brandon Marsh $1.5 million or whatever his contract's going to come up to be next year,
friendly.
I think you're probably going to balk on these guys and stick with Brandon Marsh. These.
So then you'd have to look at upgrading center field, right? Like
correct,
then we shift to probably tomorrow's position group where you go, okay, Brandon Marsh is better than Alex Verdugo. He's better than Tyler O'Neill. He's better. If that's the belief, then you have one other option, and that's to make Johan Rojas either expendable or a bench player or whatever.
Which, and you said it the other day, like we can stop using the caveat that he's a great defender. We know he's a great defender. What's his offense bring? I think teams would be fine with having the Phillies would be fine with having him as a, bench piece, late inning defensive player if they were to find somebody of merit that could be an everyday center fielder or an everyday left fielder, and Marsh plays into that role.
Yeah. All right. A couple other names on the list, and this is where
make Marsh disappear. I can't take him anymore.
Yeah, I wish. All right. Now, this is where the list starts to kind of get ugly and just be a bunch of guys. And then we're going to end the show with a little Phillies trivia. Tyler's going to put my ass on the griddle with a little Phillies trivia today. This is where the list starts to just get like, ugh.
Yeah, it's platoon guys. It's fourth outfielders.
Yeah. And to your point earlier, I do think, if you miss out on a Profar or a Teoscar or Santander or whoever, trade becomes more likely when you start talking about these guys. Right. It's kind of gross. Mark Canha.
Nah.
Like, yeah.
That's the response you're going to get from a lot of these guys is, like if they're signed as a fourth outfielder, sure. I think a lot of these guys can provide some pop off the bench or provide you something off of the bench. But a lot of these guys, like, I know Tommy Pham's name is going to come up. I know a lot of people don't want Tommy Pham.
He actually played well last year. But like Mark Canha, he's just to me like your baseline WAR player. His OPS plus is 99, kind of 240 batting average, very little pop. On bases, 344 last year, which was solid. But like, everybody's got a Mark Canha. You know what I mean? Like, it does very little for you. You're not inspired if he's your starting left fielder next year. Michael Conforto is more intriguing to me than Mark Canha, but like, at least he's got a little bit of pop. On base is very low. His OPS plus last year was 116. So at least like of this sub group that we're talking about here, Conforto might have the most intrigue to me if you became desperate and needed somebody. Sure. What's your thoughts on Conforto?
Yeah, another guy where it would be like, okay, And now what else? What else is the other move? Unless it is a true platoon with Marsh and Conforto or whatever the case may be. You're talking about what else is the next move?
Yeah. Tommy Pham, I'm kind of out.
Nah.
Alex Verdugo, kind of out.
Verdugo, I think, is going to be like, can measure it with like what their
Can he
value
grow his beard
is.
back if he comes to Philly? Because he looks weird shaved. I think he needs to move on from the Bronx just
He
so
might
he can
be
get
a
his
better
face
player with
back.
the beard too. You know what
I
I mean?
think it is. Yeah.
And so I'm gonna. So
And he's
Alex
got to drop the
Verdugo,
chain.
I think Alex Verdugo can measure it to what his market value is going to be the most overpaid player in the offseason this year as like
he's a platoon player
of this group. And I don't mean he's going to make $30 million, but I think to me, an Alex Verdugo is worth like $10, $12 million a year, and he might get close to 20. Very good defender, but a very low OBP. Just a guy that, he doesn't whiff a lot, but like your OBP should be way higher for a guy that doesn't whiff that much. And again, it kind of comes back to the conversation of, if I'm paying Verdugo, I probably would just rather have Brandon Marsh.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. A couple other names.
I had a buddy who's a Yankees fan. I texted him last night and I said, "What's your thoughts on Verdugo returning to the Yankees?" And he basically said, "Oh dear God, please no." And he followed up with, "If it makes you feel any better," because I was talking about some of the list of free agent left fielders. He goes, "If it makes you feel any better, I would kill for Brandon Marsh."
Yeah, that helps a little bit.
He's at as a Yankees fan with Alex Verdugo.
All right, Travis Jankowski. No, I'm out just based on vibes. Austin Slater, Jesse Winker. I know you are leading the anti-Winker bandwagon here.
Yeah, he's a loser. On those three names. This is purely Tyler's vibes decision. No chance I want Jesse Winker. He might be a productive baseball player, but I'm good.
Yeah, it really. I mean, the rest of this list just stinks. Yeah, all right. So I asked you, and we kind of had the same guy. And I'll be honest here, there wasn't really anybody else that jumped out to me. Like I was trying to talk myself into as the outside the box, like third tier free agent left fielder who would possibly make some sense here. We both had the same guy, and I was scratching and clawing to try and come up with somebody else, and I just couldn't talk myself into any of them. I couldn't put my family's good name next to Alex Verdugo and be like, "Oh, that's my guy in the third tier." So why don't you take it? We both had the same guy. I kind of hate you for getting it on our show sheet first before me, but he does have a little bit of intrigue as that outside the box guy. Yeah,
to me, it's Max Kepler, the guy that was with the Twins for the last couple of years. And I get it. He's coming off a pretty significant injury. I think it was a hip injury, and it was a weird injury for him where he missed the bulk of the time. And I get it. It's another left-handed bat that people are looking for a right-handed, more of a little bit of a power bat. But last year's injury really sapped his power. If you assume he's healthy, which I would imagine they would look into prior to them to any team signing him. He hit 24 home runs in his last healthy season. He's hit 20 plus in three of the years of his career. He could play either corner outfield spot. He's a good defender. Even in an injury-plagued season last year, he had a 4 range factor as an outfielder. To me, if you're looking at that like third-tier type of player who maybe you can get a little bit of pop from and get some extra oomph from that you weren't expecting, Max Kepler would be the guy that I would consider.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I was scraping the bottom of the barrel, and I was like, wait, you took who? Oh, damn it, because Kepler was mine. That pop does intrigue me. He's not going to cost you a lot of money, and he's a guy that had 36 home runs and kind of got derailed by injury. It was what, 2019, right? 36 home runs in 2019. That's not that long ago. And I don't know. I just feel like you put a player that's shown they can do it at least once in this type of environment, and it could bear some fruit for you. So that's our little bit of our outside the box. I know we're running out of time here for our diehards that have been with us viewing, but as always, we appreciate you. Now, Tyler, we'll save some of the rest for tomorrow. But you decided to put my ass on the griddle.
Yeah, this is going to be fun, I think.
We're officially in the off season, so the random Phillies trivia will commence.
So, by the way,
why don't you explain to the people?
Yeah. Unfortunately, today you and I are going to be floating heads or floating voices because we're a little bit tight in how we can do things. When you're back in the studio, we'll have a much better graphic layout. But I thought about this last night, and I thought this was a really cool concept. We're going to play random Philly of the day. And so what I'm going to do, and by the way, every Philly that we give you is going to have played for the team sometime from 2000 on. So I'm not going to give you a 1976 bench piece. It'll be from 2000 on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a silhouette of the player and one fact at a time. And you have to, after each fact, you can make a guess. You don't have to make one guess. But the earlier you get it, the more credit you get. We're not playing for points until Renee gets back. We'll start playing for points once Renee is here. But it's going to be a fact that is very vague to begin, and it'll get more and more concise as we go. So pretty simple game, but I think it might be a little bit difficult. You ready to play?
I'm putting my foot in the pressure cooker. Let's go.
All right, here is your silhouette and your first fact about the random Philly of the day.
That does nothing for me. 4th round draft pick in 2003. Okay.
And you want to take any guess at all, or you just want to move on?
No, I'm not our friend Pat Egan like that. I can't go back to 4th round draft picks in 2003. That does very little for me.
All right, here is your second fact.
2-time All-Star, 2-time Gold Glove winner.
And I am going to give you a little bit of a hint. Anytime I give a stat like this, if statistics or awards, they don't necessarily have to be won with the Phillies.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Oh, now you got my brain in a pretzel. Now I'm thinking outside the I'm thinking like Elephant in the Room with an interesting guess. Victorino. We got Marlon Byrd, the Flying Hawaiian. I was thinking of Dimitri Young. Never won a Gold Glove, did he? No. All right, give me another hint.
All right, here is your third hint.
40 plus stolen bases 5 times, led MLB in steals 3 times. Oh, damn. Oh, yes, that's who just came into my mind as well, Dex and Elephant in the Room. I'm trying. Does the timeline 03 draft line up? He was an all-star. He was a Gold Glove winner, and he stole a lot of bags. Yeah, I think I'm going to guess. I kind of agree with everybody else. I don't remember Marlon Byrd having that speed, but Michael Bourne certainly did.
Well done, Jamie. 1 for 1.
Woo!
Was going to be traded with Jeff Geary to Houston. Obviously,
that would have definitely gotten it for me.
I'm going to give you who he was traded for because, of course, the answer in that is Brad Lidge and some others. But well done, Jamie.
All right, Michael Bourne.
Third round.
Bust out. I always liked Michael Bourne.
Yeah, I mean,
I think he had high expectations, so like maybe a lot of fans felt like he didn't meet that. But he was a solid player in some dark years.
Sure, and he was a good player for Houston for quite some time. And all of those stats, by the way, were with Houston. It was kind of trying to throw you off the scent a little bit there. But I think the stolen bases.
Well, the Gold Glove had my spidey senses because the Phillies don't have a lot of outfield Gold Gloves. And then when you said doesn't necessarily mean with the Phillies, I was like, okay. Now Michael Bourne was in Houston when they still had the hill in center field. Wasn't
yeah,
it?
I believe so. I mean, I think that hill didn't come out till like mid 2010s.
Was it that late?
I think it was.
Yeah, you might be right. Yeah, because I remember Michael Bourne made that one like web gem top play where he's like running up the hill and he almost like Willie Mays one at like the top of the hill. It was crazy.
June of 2015 was when they announced that
it came out.
Really? They announced that it was going to be removed in 2015. They removed it that offseason.
Huh? I thought it was way before that. So yeah, Michael Bourne had what an absurd thing, right? Like one of the cool things about baseball is that every stadium is different. But, like, that is just changing the game.
Let me just put a flagpole on a hill in the middle of center field. That's a good idea.
Like, what the hell? Are they going to start playing parkour on the outfield wall?
I think if you really want to get crazy, I think you take the train from above the Crawford boxes, you stick it in center field, and you make them go around that.
Yeah. What an absurd thing to trot out with a new stadium. I can't believe it lasted as long as it did. Why was the MLB Players Association not like fighting that? Like, you're gonna hurt one of our guys. Like, what the hell is that?
Yeah, dude, that sounds great. Let's just put a hill in center field, make guys run up. It sounds like a good idea.
In the 6th inning, we're going to have a motorcyclist drive from left field to right field while in play, just back and forth the whole time. And hopefully
and if
our
you
guys
hit him
don't
in a
run
line
into
drive, you get 6 runs.
Yeah, like what the hell were they thinking? All right. Anyway, that's going to do it for us today. Tomorrow, we'll take a look at some of the center field free agent options and if the Phillies can maybe address center field, keep Martian left, maybe move on from Rojas. We'll take a look there and see if there's any better upgrades that can be had through the free agent class. And of course, we're going to be talking about a lot else, including random Philly trivia and a ton of other stuff. So to everybody in the chat that hung out with us today, we love you. We appreciate you. I think Mopar had it first. Michael Bourne in the chat. Good job by you. To everybody that played along with us. You can spend your time anywhere, but you spend it with us, and we really appreciate that. If you ever want to support us here at PHLY, you can consider becoming a diehard with us. You can get some free merch, invite to our Discord, all the best premium writing in town, and a ton more. So thank you to everybody. We'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Same time, same place. We'll see you then.
We all silly like the mayor.